Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Imagine setting out on this really profound spiritual journey, right? Each step a prayer, that kind of thing. But then you find yourself suddenly trapped in this web of murder and lies. Crazy, right?
Yeah, it's that immediate clash that really hits you in Death on the Camino, that
Hmm.
jarring contrast between the peace and serenity you expect from the Camino de Santiago and the brutal reality that unfolds in the story.
For sure. So today we're diving deep into Death on the Camino by Dean Carson. It's the second book in his Nick Hunter vigilante thriller series. Definitely not a light read, folks. It's a high-stakes adventure story. The Camino de Santiago, that famous pilgrimage, becomes this backdrop for uncovering dark secrets and fighting to survive. It pushes our main character, Nick, to the edge. Link to the book is in the description below, by the way. And hey, if you like this kind of deep dive into thrilling stories, hit that like button and subscribe for more. So let's get into it. Who is this Nick Hunter guy, and what's he doing on this ancient path?
Well, Nick Hunter's a super interesting character. He kind of lives in the shadows. He's got this really unique skill set. By day, he's a forensic accountant for the CIA. So he's really good at digging into complex financial stuff, finding the hidden trails and connections, which means he's naturally great at spotting those little inconsistencies and patterns that most people would miss. And that becomes super important as this mystery unfolds. But then, get this, by night, he's a magician.
Wait, seriously? That's wild.
I know, right? It's not just some random quirk either. His magic skills actually give him a real advantage. He's got amazing dexterity and this knack for misdirection. Plus, magic makes you look at the world a little differently. You're always searching for those hidden mechanisms, the things most people don't see.
Okay, so he's not your typical pilgrim searching for, spiritual enlightenment or whatever. How does a CIA agent who moonlights as a magician even end up on the Camino in the first place?
Yeah, his reasons are far from spiritual. He's actually been hired to do a hit, not just any old hit, though. He got the job through this super secretive online network that disguises itself as, get this, a magic bistro. It's this clever front for a whole community of, shall we say, less than law-abiding folks.
Wow, a magic bistro for hitmen. Talk about a hidden world.
Right. So to blend in, Nick adopts the alias Paul Vandy, and to really fit in with all the pilgrims, he even carries a less official pilgrim passport called a credential.
The pilgrim passport. That sounds like more than just a, travel document in this case.
Oh, absolutely. The credential is central to the whole Camino experience. Pilgrims collect stamps in it along the route, and it gives them access to cheap accommodation and food at the pilgrim hostels. It's kind of like a symbol of their journey. And for Nick, it's crucial for staying under the radar. Even though he's used to a much higher standard of living, he needs that pilgrim passport to move among the other walkers without raising any eyebrows.
Right, so he's there for this secret mission, using the pilgrimage as a cover. But then the story takes a hard left turn, right?
Yeah, things get really dark really fast.
Oh.
Early on, while he's in Biarritz, Nick meets Steve and Megan. They run into each other at a bar, pretty normal, right? But then things take a horrifying turn. Imagine Steve's shock when he finds a human finger in his beer.
Ugh, that's just wrong. That's the kind of detail that grabs you and screams, this is not your grandma's travel story.
No kidding. And then, to make matters worse, they find a severed arm, like a whole arm just thrown in a flower box on the second floor. Talk about a mood killer. It immediately introduces the sense of danger lurking beneath the surface of this peaceful pilgrimage.
Yikes. So how does Nick, who's already there on this secret mission, get tangled up in this whole gruesome situation?
Well, here's where the story takes a really interesting turn. Nick's original assignment gets interrupted by Cardinal Benelucci. Now, this cardinal is a pretty powerful figure in the church. Somehow he finds out about Nick's unique talents, let's call them that.
Right, the CIA agent magician side gig.
Exactly. So the cardinal approaches Nick with this unusual request. He doesn't want Nick to kill anyone, but he needs him to find someone. This person is connected to a string of really strange deaths that have been happening to pilgrims on the Camino for the past 5 years.
A cardinal hiring a hitman for a manhunt. That's a pretty morally ambiguous situation right there.
Mm.
And you mentioned these deaths were strange. Like how?
Yeah, so the cardinal reveals that there's this pattern to the killings. Each victim is killed in a way that seems symbolically linked to some sin or aspect of their life. There was this guy who denied Christ, and he was found crucified upside down. And then a greedy moneylender who seemingly suffocated in gold. Turns out it was actually poison in the paint, but you get the idea. A liar was found with their lips sewn shut. And maybe the most disturbing one, someone who used to cut up bodies was found dismembered, with organs and fingers missing. The killer is going for shock value, for sure.
It sounds like the killer's trying to deliver some kind of message, right? Like a twisted form of justice.
Yeah, there's definitely a warped sense of morality at play here. It's
Okay.
disturbing how this place known for piety is being used as a stage for this kind of violence. And it just goes to show how easily something sacred can be twisted, you know?
Okay, so Nick went from having one target to being pulled into this investigation of ritualistic killings. Quite a shift. And then we have Magdalene entering the picture, which adds a whole other layer of intrigue.
Right. Magdalene's arrival really shakes things up. She's a pornographic actress, and she decides to walk the Camino as part of a documentary about, her spiritual journey, finding her way back to God. The cardinal's obviously a little wary, right? He's worried about the whole thing being exploitative, but he agrees to let them film on one condition. They have to have a minder with them at all times. And guess who gets the job?
Nick, I'm guessing. Paul Vandy, officially.
You got it. Talk about a clash of worlds. You've got this woman from the adult entertainment industry seeking redemption on the same path where a potential serial killer is carrying out these twisted acts. And overseeing it all is a CIA agent. The Camino in this story is anything but predictable.
It really is.
Mm.
So what's Nick's role with Magda supposed to be? Just making sure the documentary doesn't get too, shall we say, disrespectful?
Yeah, basically. But almost immediately, both Nick and Magda start getting this creepy feeling like they're being watched. Then someone tries to mug them. Nick, being Nick, easily fights them off, but it turns out the mugging wasn't random. Someone planned it, which suggests a whole other level of manipulation going on.
Okay, that's getting seriously creepy. But who would be behind something like that?
Right. It's a big question. And then we meet Inspector Victor Rodriguez. He's a local police officer, and at first his interactions with Nick and Magda seem totally normal. But there's something off about him, like maybe he knows more than he's letting on.
Ugh, I hate when that happens. So now Nick has his original hit, the Cardinal's investigation, his minder duties, and this creepy feeling of being watched,
Right.
plus a potentially shady cop. The pressure is definitely building.
Definitely. And then it gets even weirder. Nick gets this cryptic text message that seems totally unrelated to everything else that's going on. Meanwhile, Inspector Rodriguez keeps popping up everywhere they go. Even the Cardinal starts to get nervous. He hints that Nick's original hit and his own investigation into the Camino killings might actually be connected. That's when Nick realizes he's stumbled into something much bigger and way more dangerous than he ever imagined.
So those two separate missions might actually be intertwined.
It's starting to look that way. And then
Yeah.
there's this whole photo opportunity thing, which seems kind of risky, if you ask me.
Fill me in. What happened?
Okay, so they decide to stage this photo up with Magda. The idea is to use her as bait, to draw out whoever is watching them, maybe even the killer. They find this really visible spot, and the tension is so thick you could cut it with a knife. And then all of a sudden, they hear what sounds like rapid gunfire. Everyone freaks out, obviously. But then it turns out it was just firecrackers. Magda actually makes this sarcastic comment about Nick's reaction, which I thought was pretty funny.
After all that, it was just firecrackers. That's messed up. Sounds like someone's playing mind games with them.
Yeah, it's definitely unsettling. So after that whole ordeal, they decide to lay low for a bit. They end up seeking refuge in this remote, abandoned former nunnery. It's off the main Camino trail, and it's, well, kind of creepy. But the isolation is supposed to make it safe.
Hmm.
No prying eyes, no immediate threats.
An abandoned nunnery. Not exactly a relaxing vacation spot. But I guess desperate times call for desperate measures. And that's where the real attack happens, right?
Unfortunately, yeah. The supposed safety of the nunnery is shattered when they hear noises outside in the middle of the night. And then, bam, a gunshot. No mistaking it this time. This is the real deal. Nick instantly goes into action mode. He tells the Cardinal to stay put and get dressed while he assesses the situation and tries to keep everyone safe.
So now it's not just mind games, it's a full-on attack.
Yeah.
What does Nick do?
He's super quick on his feet. He uses the darkness to his advantage and fires off a flare. It's a smart move, really. The sudden burst of light is meant to blind anyone outside who might be using night vision or who has adjusted to the darkness. It buys them some time to figure out what to do next.
That's some serious tactical thinking under pressure. So
Yeah.
what's the plan?
Nick realizes that staying together in one place is a bad idea. He's most worried about Magda. He thinks she's the main target, so he splits the group up. He sends Furman, the Cardinal's assistant, along with Mac, the cameraman, and Amanda, someone working on Magda's documentary, up the hill towards the main trail. The idea is to draw the attacker away. Nick and Inspector Rodriguez stay behind with Magda.
Splitting up is always risky, but I can see why you'd do it.
Yeah.
And then Magda becomes the decoy, right?
Yep. The plan is to use Magda to distract the shooter. She runs across an open space, and Nick and Rodriguez follow her down a different path. Meanwhile, the other group is making noise going up the hill, hoping to further confuse the attacker and give Nick and Magda a chance to escape.
It's a dangerous plan, but a clever one. Does it work?
Well, they are pursued, just as Nick expected. Gunfire erupts as they run, and in the chaos, Inspector Rodriguez falls off a cliff. It's a long drop, and Magda is understandably freaking out. But Nick has to stay focused. He knows they have to keep moving.
Wow, what a turn of events. So now Nick is on his own with limited resources? That's got to be terrifying.
Right. He's lost Rodriguez's automatic weapon, so all he has is his small concealed pistol, some bootlaces, a knife, and his clothes. They're still being hunted by someone with an AK-47. The odds are definitely not in their favor.
Facing an AK-47 with just a pistol and some bootlaces. That's intense. So is this when they finally come face-to-face with their attacker?
It is. And guess who it turns out to be? Terrence Fleischman, a crazed fan of Magdalene. He's been circling around, trying to cut them off. He even sets a booby trap, but Nick's one step ahead. He actually removes the bullets from Rodriguez's dropped pistol because he figures Fleischman might try to use it against him. They end up fighting, and even though Nick gets the upper hand, he chooses not to kill Fleischman.
Wow, so he shows restraint even in that situation. That says a lot about him. What happens after they take down Fleischman?
They eventually make it back to Pamplona, but things get even stranger. Rodriguez's behavior starts getting really weird, and then Magda suddenly takes off, leaving just the vague note about her mother being sick. The cardinal suspects something's wrong, and he basically forces the local police to investigate Rodriguez, and that's when they uncover a truly horrifying truth.
What was it? What was Rodriguez hiding?
It turns out that Inspector Rodriguez, the guy who was supposed to be investigating the Camino killings, was the killer all along. And get this, he had murdered his own family before joining the Camino group. Talk about a plot twist.
No way. The cop was the killer. That's insane. But why target pilgrims? And what did Magda have to do with any of this?
Well, it seems Magda was supposed to be his next victim. Remember how the killer targeted people based on their sins? Rodriguez saw Magda as representing lust, given her line of work. The cardinal even makes a comment about the money lenders in the temple, suggesting that Rodriguez thought he was carrying out some kind of twisted divine justice.
So Magda narrowly escaped one deadly situation, only to end up as the target of another. What do Nick and the cardinal do?
They know they have to find Magda before Rodriguez does, and their search leads them to this underground human hunt auction. It's this awful illegal event where people literally hunt other people for sport. Nick decides to enter the auction as a participant, putting his own life on the line to save Magda.
A human hunt. That's just beyond messed up.
Yeah.
Who else is involved in this thing?
Well, there's this dentist named Johannes Dorf who's known for torturing animals, and Johannes Strubel, an ex-cop with a reputation for brutality. And then there's Angie Cole, this tech CEO who's infamous for live streaming her kills. Talk about a nightmare lineup.
Wow, they're all awful. And where does this hunt even take place?
They hold it in this abandoned power plant. It's huge, dark, and full of all sorts of creepy machinery. It's the perfect setting for a deadly game of cat and mouse.
Sounds terrifying. So how does Nick handle himself against these, seriously dangerous opponents?
Well, he relies on his training and his smarts. He runs into both Dorf and Strubel, and he manages to take them out using a taser. He doesn't want to kill them. He's just trying to get to Magda.
It's amazing that he can stay focused on the mission with all that going on. What about Angie Cole? She sounds especially dangerous.
Yeah, their encounter is really intense. There's a standoff, and Nick uses a hunting knife as a distraction before taking her down in hand-to-hand combat. Again, he manages to subdue her without killing her.
He's really sticking to his own code, even in this insane situation. And then he finally confronts Rodriguez.
Yep. He finds Rodriguez in the power plant and basically tells him he knows everything. A huge gunfight breaks out, and in the end, Nick manages to kill Rodriguez, putting an end to his reign of terror once and for all.
So what happens to everyone else? Does it all work out in the end?
Yeah, Magda is rescued from the auction, and Fleischman gets arrested. Nick is injured, of course, and ends up getting patched up by, get this, a veterinarian.
Only Nick Hunter would end up at a vet after a shootout with a serial killer.
Right. And then there's this really interesting moment between Nick and Magda, which kind of suggests they've formed a bond after all they went through. Oh, And there's this funny little subplot where it turns out Nick's brother Lester has actually gotten married to this woman named Serena. It was just a big misunderstanding, but it adds a bit of lightness to the ending.
Well, after all that darkness, a little bit of humor is definitely welcome. So, looking back on Death on the Camino, what are some of the key takeaways?
This story is all about the contrast between appearances and reality. The Camino, this path that's supposed to be about spiritual growth and community, becomes this backdrop for some truly awful things. It makes you think about faith, about how easily good intentions can get twisted, and about the surprising strength people can find in the face of danger. It's a reminder that even in the most peaceful places, darkness can lurk beneath the surface.
Absolutely. Death on the Camino is a wild ride, for sure. And that wraps up our deep dive. Thanks for listening, everyone. Now we want to hear from you. What was the most shocking moment in this story? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button and share it with your friends.
You know, as we've seen with this journey into darkness along a path meant for enlightenment, even the most tranquil settings can hide the most disturbing truths. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What hidden realities might be lurking beneath the surface of our own everyday lives?